Welcome to Next on the Tee with Chris Mascaro, the show where you get the inside access to the best minds in the game. Each week, Chris has the privilege of chatting with top instructors, legendary players, course architects, and industry insiders. If you're looking to improve your game, gain a new perspective, or just hear some incredible golf stories, you are indeed in the right place.
You see, Chris, let me tell you something. I haven't spoken to a press man in my life that is knowledgeable, seriously, as you are. Never.
You do such a great job. It kind of makes me feel good all of a sudden.
You do so much for the game. You're so kind to all of us that are out there in the game. You know, we need more people like you in the game of golf.
Thank you for pressing play. Now, grab your clubs, step up to the tee, and let's get started. This is Next on the Tee.
Hi, folks, and welcome into this edition of Next on the Tee, where golf legends live and your game gets better. I'm your host, Chris Mascaro, and as always, a huge amount of vitamin G of gratitude for you being here and pressing play on this episode of the show. I've got two outstanding guests that I'm very excited to share with you, both longtime friends, and I'm honored to say that, really. I mean, when you get to say that these two guys have been a longtime friend and supporter of the show, it is really humbling. One of them is one of the all-time great storytellers and documentarians whose productions you've watched for decades. The other is a true champion both on and off the course, and you're going to be stunned to hear how much he was the medalist by when he was going through Q School. That was played at TPC Sawgrass. Who am I talking about? Well, first up is going to be the former president of HBO Sports, now the head of his own production company, and that's Ross Greenburg. Ross's documentaries and movies have won so many awards, he's likely run out of room to display them in his office, well over 100 and counting at this point. If you've watched the all-access shows on Showtime leading up to the Stanley Cup or to a major boxing event, he did those. Or on Epix, did you see the Road to the Winter Classic? Maybe documentaries about David Ortiz or Dwight Howard or the Forgotten Four. He's done those. He's done so many things for so many other outlets, including the Golf Channel and the USGA, and of course, going back to his days at HBO Sports. He did Do You Believe in Miracles, the documentary about the 1980 U.S. hockey team and their run-up to the gold medal, and then did the movie Miracle for Disney about that very same team. Look, folks, he is just a genius and the guy behind so many great sports documentaries and movies of our time. Here we are on the heels of the amazing gold medal runs for both the men's and the women's U.S. hockey teams. So this time around, guess what? Ross and I are going to dive deeply into making the movie Miracle, where the idea came from to do a movie about it after he did the documentary, how they shot it so we felt like we were on the ice in the middle of the action, his conversations with Herb Brooks, and the interactions between Herb and Kurt Russell so Kurt could do such an outstanding job being Herb in that movie. Look, if you're a fan of USA Hockey, you're really going to enjoy the stories that Ross shares in this segment. You're going to also hear about the movie that he did with Billy Crystal titled 61, about the home run record chase back in 1961 that Mickey Mantle and Roger Maris were doing. You're also going to hear some more great stories about baseball. You remember the documentary When It Was a Game and When It Was a Game 2 and 3? It did those for HBO Sports, so we'll talk a little bit about that. We also touch on a more recent docu that he did about Bird and Magic. Ross is great. I know you're going to love all of these stories. Following him is former two-time winner out on the PGA Tour and a fellow space nut, Donnie Hammond. Like I say, Donnie has been a great friend of this show going back to the very early days. If you recall from his previous appearances, he and I share an affinity for NASA and the space program. He's right down there in Orlando, so it's easy for him to slide over to the East Coast and get to watch those launches. At the end of our conversation, we'll talk about the Artemis 2 mission that's coming up. It's going to be the first time that man has at least orbited the moon since Apollo 17 back in the mid-1970s. Aside from that, Donnie shares his thoughts on Anthony Kim's amazing recovery and return to the winner's circle. We talk about the tournament that Kim won down there in Australia and the record crowds that they were able to draw, and they have done so at that tournament for the last 3 years. Donnie shares stories from when he played in the Australian Open back in the day. You'll also hear about his experiences playing in the Masters, the practice round that he got to play with the King, Arnold Palmer, and how in the world we ever played with persimmon woods and balata golf balls. Donnie's awesome. So many great stories. I know you're going to love that segment as well. So, folks, it's a fantastic show in store for you. Again, thank you for being here. Thank you for pressing play and for taking the journey with me. And if I may, I'd like to ask just a real quick favor from you. Something that's free and it's only going to take you a couple of seconds to do. Whatever platform you're listening to this show on, please subscribe and rate the show. You know how important the algorithms are nowadays for getting the show in front of more people. If you'll subscribe and rate it, it goes a long way towards getting the show recommended to others and at the top of search lists when people are looking for golf podcasts. Like I say, it would literally just take a few seconds. It would make a world of difference, and I would appreciate it very, very much. Thank you. You guys are truly the greatest supporters in the history of podcasts. Okay, but before we get into all of that, I want to start off by giving a shout out to my great friends over at the Trib. TribLive.com is the leading news website in Western Pennsylvania, with news around the clock, Pittsburgh pro sports coverage, a high school sports network, and a podcast network, which is where you can find Next on the Tee. Bookmark TribLive.com or download the Trib Live app for free and stay up to date with the latest news from Western Pennsylvania and beyond. I also want to talk about our friends over at the Pittsburgh Brewing Company and Iron City Beer, a brand that I have loved my whole life and started drinking when I was 21 years old, of course. Whether you're a hacker or a scratcher, the secret to a successful day on the links is knowing when it's time to grab an iron, even if that means keeping it in the bag till the 19th hole. If it's been a while since you've reached for Pittsburgh staple beer, it's time to revisit Iron City. Thanks to their incredible new facility in Creighton, the best-tasting Iron City beer ever made is now available at a course near you. Iron City pairs well with any lie and sky and serves as a friendly reminder that there's always next round. And because it's never too early for chocolate, their double chocolate Bock is back for the season, and it's the perfect companion for a cozy winter evening. Check out all of their wonderful beers and their gift shop by going online to pittsburghbrewing.com. In golf, fast isn't a nice-to-have, fast is a necessity, and speed off the tee is where it all starts. That was precisely the thinking behind the all-new QI4D family of drivers from TaylorMade, our fastest, most fittable drivers. Built to meet the demands of the world's best players like Scottie Scheffler, Rory McIlroy, Nelly Korda, and the rest of Team TaylorMade. The QI4D lineup was engineered to unlock the 4 dimensions of speed, starting with a multi-material driver head with enhanced aerodynamic shaping, combined with a faster face and our revolutionary React shaft system. The TaylorMade QI4D drivers are ready to extract every bit of speed from every golfer's unique swing profile. Our industry-leading adjustability and fitting unlocks it all. Watch the full story of QI4D, our quest to build the fastest, most fittable drivers, and unlock your newfound speed at TaylorMadeGolf.com/findingfast. Okay, now back in Next on the Tee with me is a guy that I happen to think the world of and has been a wonderful part of this show for over a decade, and that is Ross Greenburg. Ross spent 33 years at HBO. He served as vice president and executive producer of HBO Sports from 1985 to 1990, senior vice president and executive producer from 1990 to 2000, and president of HBO Sports from 2000 to 2011. He produced the incredible series Sports of the 20th Century, as well as Real Sports with Brian Gumbel, Inside the NFL, HBO World Championship Boxing, and so many others. He left HBO and created Ross Greenburg Productions and since has made the best sports documentaries of this or any other time. He is one of the most innovative producers and best storytellers in broadcast history. He's won over 100 major television sports awards. He was the executive producer for the movie Miracle about the 1980 U.S. hockey team, and if you go back to his days at HBO Sports, he also did a documentary called Do You Believe in Miracles, which I loved. On my list of all-time favorite movies, Miracle is right there at the top. He is also just one of the great people that you get to meet in this life, and I couldn't be more honored that I get to spend some more time with him this week here on Next on the Tee. Hey, Ross, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing real well, Chris. It's great to always be with you.
Ross, I want to start out because, like I said, you've been involved with so many great projects and documentaries. Like I mentioned in your intro, you're one of the all-time great storytellers. Where does that come from? Was that an innate talent that you had? Is that something that you cultivated over the years based on all the experiences that you have? How'd you develop your abilities and your style to do that?
I think it really started when I was a little kid and I would watch, interestingly, given the timing here, I was watching a lot of ABC Sports. I lived down the street from Frank Gifford, and his son and I, Kyle, were best friends and played football through high school from the age of 7 or 8 on. And so I was always at the house. So I was very familiar with what ABC Sports and Root Arledge were doing at the time and used to be glued to the television set, particularly during the Olympics. And that's where Roon really shone as a storyteller. And he really was the biggest influence in really forming my look at sports and seeing it from the inside and trying to feel the athletes' stories as much as their accomplishments on the field or whatnot. And so that's the roots of it. And then as time went on, I was exposed to sports television through ABC Sports because Frank got us some jobs as production assistants, both Kyle and I. And so I saw the behind the scenes. And then when I got to HBO Sports, it really blossomed because, at the time it was impossible for HBO other than boxing to pay the kind of rights to get major television events for sports in the MLB world and NBA and NFL. So our real goal at the time from our great CEO, Michael Fuchs, was to put programming on the air that you couldn't see on network television. Because remember, at that time when HBO was launched, there was no real basic cable. So that's when I had the idea and I approached Tim Brain, my boss, and said, we ought to really open up and do documentaries and see if we can forge some new worlds. And then out of that grew all the great docus that you spoke about, Magic and Bird, 9 Innings from Ground Zero, and about 90 while I was at HBO. And then it just kept going, and I just dove into it and had an unbelievable staff. It wasn't about me. It was an incredible staff of documentarians that we put together, and the rest is history.
So let's take that a step further, because none of us get to where we are in our lives on our own. There's always been other people that helped us along our journey. Was it Roon Arledge, or were there other people that mentored you along the way?
Oh, there were very many other people that mentored me. I really became very close to two great storytellers, Bud Greenspan and Steve Sable. And as you know, they were the pioneers. In the 60s, Steve Sable was taking out his 16 millimeter cameras and shooting Vince Lombardi and Dick Butkus for an entire year, or Sam Huff, and doing some really glorious documentaries on that. And so he was a great influence. Of course, Bud was chronicling every Olympics, since the 60s. So they were two huge influences in that world. And of course, you always learn. And of course, Roon he wasn't a mentor because I didn't really get to know him very well until it was, I was doing some documentaries on Howard Cosell and asked him to do an interview, which was very rare. He was a very shy man, but I got him to do an interview and got to tell him what an influence he was, not only on me, but on HBO. I said to him one day, all I did was change the letters. Everything that HBO Sports became was really through the kind of lens of ABC Sports.
So let me ask you something that's a little down a different path, but just because I'm curious.
Mm-hmm.
I know you're a great golf fan, and Ben Wright was a wonderful friend of mine for many, many years. God rest his soul. And he told a lot of stories about the great Frank Cherkinian. Did you ever have any time to spend with Frank?
Oh, I spent a ton of time. Interestingly, you brought up two interesting names because Frank Gifford once got me and Kyle a job during our summer between our junior and senior year of college, and he got us tracking ABC Sports programs, and then he gave us he got us onto Frank's staff as production assistants for the golf tour at CBS. And so from week to week, we would get in a car and drive to wherever the CBS golf tournament was. And my assignment was to be on the tower with Ben Wright.
Is that
on the
right?
17th hole. Absolutely. For an entire summer. And I got to know Ben really, really well. He had an incredibly quick wit. You know, that British accent always brought a flair to golf coverage. And they just had a different kind of sense of humor, but also had incredible insight into the game, you know. And Ben was a great, great announcer who I really appreciated, and he taught me a lot. And I was sitting right beside him that summer, doing those golf tournaments. Frank, you know, was leading the ship, and, you know, he was really revolutionizing the way golf was covered. Of course, there would be some debate from ABC at the time because they were covering the Opens, and they did a hell of a job. But Frank was a magician. Frank, you know, his Masters coverage was just unbelievable. Very similar to the coverage that you watch today, by the way.
Yeah. I mean, I thought everything that they did, going back even into the mid 70s when they were covering the Masters, I thought what they did is every bit as good, if not better, than what we see today. Taking nothing away from the great announcers that they have. I just love the way they did it.
Oh my God. I mean, it was spectacular. You know, that music comes from Frank Cherkinian, and that entire kind of sweeping, beautiful crafting of pictures that he created on the golf course to bring that golf course to life. And I'm talking about as much the flowers and everything else, and the texture and the just the look of the course and the topography of the course. And it's all from Frank. And, you know, that mellow kind of peaceful presentation that they do.
Yeah, 100%. But what's your favorite Ben Wright story?
Interestingly, I don't remember any individual stories with Ben. I can give you one fun story, though, with a person that he respected very much when I was at ABC Sports doing the same kind of work that I did for Ben, and that's Henry Longhurst. Remember that?
Yes, they worked together on the Masters a lot of times.
A lot of times, but then Henry was really exclusive to ABC, but we were once doing a U.S. Open at Wingfoot, and those towers were very high. They still are. And this is when Henry was getting pretty old. I mean, we must have been close to 80 or something. And those towers, getting him up was not so easy. We got him up, and then we were on 17 at Wingfoot. And between shots, whenever there was a commercial or it wasn't his turn to do his business, he would pull out a little flask and he would take a couple of shots. And you know, he was an hysterical man. I mean, he was talk about wit. But by the end of the day, and this went on from Friday all the way through Sunday, because in those days they only broadcast Saturday and Sunday. But he would, we would have to literally get beside him and almost carry him down those stairs. But he was so fun. I mean, what a great man he was. Loved working with him. And Ben was very similar to him, but he didn't take those shots.
Well, they did the 75 Masters together. I don't know if you remember, but, you know, when Jack makes that incredible putt in 75 on the 16th hole that essentially, you know, crushed Tom Weiskopf, but it was Henry Longhurst who made the call that I've never seen such a putt in all my life. And that's something that I always remember about.
Totally forgot that one.
That's amazing that how well they worked together.
It must have been very soon after that he was taken away by ABC.
I want to get your thoughts on both sides of this coin, because most times early in our careers, we're out there hustling and saying yes to things a lot of times because we're not where we want to be yet. We think we have to in order to get our names out there. Did you ever say yes to a project, now looking back, that you wish you hadn't?
Not really. I mean, I would pick projects, talk to, you know, before I became president, I would just talk to whether it's Seth Abraham or Tim Brain before him, and they pretty much would okay it. And I wouldn't, I was very judgmental. I wouldn't take projects that I didn't feel were worthy. There were a couple of documentary series that I was kind of handed that I didn't really want to do. I can think of one. It was called Sex and Sports. And I remember being dumbfounded when I was told to produce it. And I said, what am I supposed to do with that? I didn't, because at the time, remember the series Real Sex?
Yeah.
Well, I guess the theory was it worked so well ratings wise, why don't we do it in the world of sports? But basically, I still don't know how we put together a show. So that was one. I couldn't tell you what was in it. I have no idea what it was about. And we certainly didn't have nudity in it. I can tell you that.
Right.
But, yeah, that one I'll never forget.
All right. So on the opposite side of the coin, was there a project that kind of put you over the top that really got you to where you wanted to be in the industry, so that from that point on, you were able to pick and choose which projects you wanted to be involved with?
Well, there was one turning point, and that was when it was a game back in 1990. I don't even know if you remember.
Oh,
it.
For sure I do, because there were 2 installments of that.
Yeah, we actually ended up doing 3. But
is that right?
Yeah, but 10 years after the first 2, we did a third. But that one changed the way I looked at documentary filmmaking for sports. Prior to that, sports docus were pretty much talking heads and go to the footage. But there we spent 6 months crafting that documentary and figuring out what to do, because it was a look back at baseball from the 30s through the 60s. We got 100, hours of color home movies. And here we had this beautiful palette, but we had to shape kind of a documentary that would showcase what it was like to be in baseball, in Major League Baseball, as a fan and as a player, back in those early days. We, of course, had this color footage, which was unprecedented. So that really changed the way I looked at filmmaking for HBO. And then, there were a couple of other major points in my life where I had reached a dream, and that was doing 61, the movie for HBO on Mantle and Maris. Billy Crystal, I pulled in, and we spent a lot of time putting that movie together. And I think it became a real classic for HBO. And then, of course, that catapulted into doing a documentary on the women's soccer team that was important in my life, because now I'm making a movie off of that for Netflix. But that changed my perception, and they created the revolution in women's sports. And so, I really started focusing on women's sports from that point on. But Miracle will always remain a treasure, because it kind of has been a stamp of greatness for 20 years now.
Yeah.
And it keeps coming back. Every Olympics, because they come back, there's a reminder that there's this film that captured all of it. And and people look at that as like a classic now, and that makes me feel as good as I can feel.
So I want to get really into the details of Miracle. I want to do it in just a second, but you mentioned 61 with Billy Crystal. I know that was a passion project for him. He was a huge Mickey Mantle fan. What was it like trying to put that together with Billy, knowing how much all of that stuff meant to him, and then going out to Tiger Stadium and the places that you went to film that period piece?
Well, first of all, Billy, it was a huge passion project because he idolized Mickey. He got to know Mickey and become friendly with Mickey. I'd spent time with Mickey. And then I think when we decided to do it, I literally had to convince him to direct it, because it was clear after a month of starting the project, I I said, well, no one else can direct this. You have to direct it. And he was a little reticent at first. Um, and I just convinced him and HBO, Billy has to do this. And then from that point on, this was a wonderful experience because in great television or filmmaking is when everyone collaborates and you have a leader like Billy or a great director who can kind of create a team, and everyone wants what's best for the film. And no one's looking for any self-aggrandizement or any of that. And that's what happened. And, we perfected a script. And then when you have a great script, you can make a great movie. You can't make a great movie out of a bad script. So we spent all that time all over LA, and then we went to Tiger Stadium to recreate Yankee Stadium. It was sitting there empty, by the way. The city of Detroit didn't know what to do with it. So we took over it for 2 weeks and created lime green seats. And all of a sudden we had Yankee Stadium, brought Yogi Berra out there, the Mantle family, and lived a dream, really. I mean, it was just to look at that field and see the number 7 and 9 and, 16 and all those Yankees legends, on the field in those pinstripes. I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it. Merlin Mantle was actually crying when she walked on the field, and saw, her old husband and in the form of Thomas Jane. I mean, it was a moment I'll never forget. And of course, crafting the film was just heaven. It was like being in heaven. And then I'll never forget, we ended our 2 weeks of shooting at Tiger Stadium, one last scene, and someone brought cigars to me and Billy, and we walked the field alone. We encircled Tiger Stadium in the infield, even the outfield, actually. It was a long walk, and just reminisced on what we had just done. And it was just a moment that I'll never forget.
So what was it like when you guys finished the project? It was all ready to go. The movie was set, and now you're kind of watching the premiere together. What was that like? Had to be emotional.
Totally emotional. I mean, it was, each of us had seen it he probably saw it 100 times and I probably saw it 50 times. But when you have an audience there, and they're starting to react to it, that's when it gets emotional, because you realize, wow, we did good, and all smiles, and at the end, the cheering, and that's when you really get the self-satisfaction of doing something special that'll live.
So speaking of emotional, now we got to get into Miracle, because here we are. It's the Winter Olympics. The tournament is still going on. The women today, as we are recording this, just won the gold medal over Canada. Miracle is one of the all-time great movies. I mean, for crying out loud, anybody that I talk to about the movie, and you're right, every year around this time, because even in February, I mean, every February 22nd, which is the anniversary of beating the Soviet Union, it becomes a big deal on social media. Talk about putting that movie together and when it came to you as an idea and as a project that you could get involved with.
First of all, it came out of my head. I was on a plane going to LA when the game was live, even though, ABC didn't carry it till 3 or 4 hours later. So when it was going on, the pilot was giving us updates every period. And, he'd say 3-2, 4-3. At the end, when he said, 4-3 US, an entire plane erupted. And at that moment, I said, well, wait a second. This isn't just a hockey game, and then about, I don't know, 20 years later, I had done a documentary called Greatest Sports Upsets, and had done a segment with Eruzione, and, we did like 5-6 minutes on each of the greatest upsets in the history of sports. that was before when it was a game, so it was more of that old style of putting a documentary together. But it was still Miracle. It was the story, and I fueled the fire there because I realized that it wasn't doing 6 minutes on it is not justification for doing that story. So I lit up a Do You Believe in Miracles documentary for HBO and laid out the whole story. And so that was like in 2001 or two. And when I was making that documentary, I said, well, this is a movie, and I wanted to make a movie. And so I got the rights to Herb Brooks, his life rights. I went through his agent, Janet Pawson, and got his life rights and said, I'd like to make this movie. At the time, I had an interesting clause in my contract at HBO where I could show them concept first and they could buy it immediately, first right to the film. So I obviously presented to HBO, but HBO was only doing 2 or 3 films a year at that point. And so they kind of said, no, you can go take it out elsewhere. And so I was having a meeting. I was in the middle of making Do You Believe in Miracles? And I took a meeting with a guy named Mark Varadian at Disney. And he said, well, what are you up to right now? And I said, well, I'm making a documentary on the 1980 U.S. men's hockey team. And I have the rights to Herb Brooks. And, I think it's a movie. And he almost fell out of his chair. And he went, I always wanted to make that movie. Let's make it. I said, fine. So Disney bought it in like 20 seconds.
Wow.
And that started the ball rolling. And there, in 2005, we had our movie. And it launched and, it hit big. I'll never forget the night it premiered because in those days, movies were only in theaters. Do you remember that? And so,
right.
So I took my son around and went into about 6 or 7 theaters in Westchester and New York. And it was pretty cool to see all these packed houses, audiences cheering. It felt really cool. And
No
it
doubt.
never let up. That movie has never let up.
Netflix has got a new documentary out about the team right now. And in it, speaking of Herb, they interviewed his son and daughter, and they raved about the performance that Kurt Russell gave as their father in Miracle.
Oh, cool.
We unfortunately lost Herb, right? You guys were what, pre-production when he passed?
Yeah, we were pre-production, and we were only about a month out from starting principal photography. And yeah, he passed away. Sweet, sweet man. If you remember at the very end, Gavin O'Connor, the director, came up with a line. This is dedicated to Herb Brooks. He passed away before, while we were starting to shoot. But he lived it, something like that. And it was a very special way to end the movie. We updated what all the guys were doing at that point in their lives. And and I still occasionally, there'll be some kind of an impromptu screening. I recently, about a month ago, did a screening of it with O'Callahan and McClanahan.
Is that right?
Yeah. It's kind of the kind of screening that you don't want to publicize, by the way. So
is that because the theater would be overrun with people?
Yeah.
No doubt. But you got to spend a fair amount of time with Herb in those pre-production meetings, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And did he have an opportunity? Was Kurt Russell involved in those conversations? Did they get to spend a lot of time together? Is that where Russell learned how to be Herb?
Yes, the two of them spent some time together, and that was glorious. Thank God that Herb was able to do that. He wasn't sick; it was a sudden death. I mean, he was okay. So, but Kurt did spend time with him, and I mean, I don't know of any actor that's nailed a part the way Kurt nailed that part. It was interesting because at the time his son was playing goalie up in Canada at a very high level. So Kurt was kind of engrossed in hockey at that point in his life. Really followed his son up to Canada to pursue his dream of being a goalie. And so it was perfect timing for Kurt to, bust into that role. But man, we'll be listening to that speech in that locker room for, well, I guess I don't know how much longer I'll be around, but hopefully that will endure for years to come.
No doubt it will. Were the players on set? Did they contribute to the scenes and how things played out and what it was actually like?
Yeah, they did. They all had their little input, and it was interesting because they understood that we're still making a movie. When you do movies like that, whether it's 61 that or a movie I'm making now, you have to kind of you have to take a little bit of liberty because you're not there for scenes, right? You have to create the dialogue. But the most important thing is to essentially follow the story as it was. Don't tamper with the story. And interestingly, with Miracle and 61, it's so rich that there's no reason to. And so I think the players appreciated that with Miracle, that we didn't stretch the truth or any of that. Most of it was right on. I'm not going to say all of it was right on. I mean, McClanahan and O'Callahan never really fought in practice, but there was definitely a little tension between Boston and Minnesota.
Yeah, for sure. One of the things that Herb talked about, speaking of that, was how great it was building those guys into a team. He also talked about how he wasn't necessarily looking for the best players. He was looking for the right players, and those two things are rarely the same. Did you get a sense of his genius for how he took a group of kids that were rivals, group of kids from Minnesota, group of kids from, in and around the Boston area, two groups of guys that essentially hated each other, but got them to hate him as the common person that ultimately galvanized that group of kids into a team?
Yeah, I mean, they say even today, Jim Craig, I saw in an interview that, it wasn't about becoming a buddy of Herb Brooks, and he had his own style. And you just nailed exactly what his whole mission was, is to have them really not hate him, but really respect him and be fearful of him. But, somehow come together. I think the Norway scene after that exhibition game in Norway personifies, and that is a true story, how Herb Brooks maneuvered this team. When he made them stay after the game because he didn't feel like they put 100% of their effort in and do those Herbies, as they were called, until the lights were turned off by the maintenance guy at the Norway Stadium or arena. That encapsulated everything that you just said. I mean, that was basically saying, I'm going to run you guys into the ground. He knew that he had to put them in exceptional, incredible shape because that was the only way to beat the Soviets, was to outskate them. We're going to beat them at their own game. Remember in the speech he said that?
Sure.
That was a typical maneuver that he had in Norway in order to accomplish that.
Did that scene when Eruzione speaks up, was that real? Is that how that whole scene ended in real life?
No.
Okay.
I mean, it ended, I think O'Callahan or McClanahan told me, or it was one of the two, that one of those two smashed their stick against the sidewall, and basically really loud. And that's when Herb said, okay, I guess I've done enough. But all that turning the lights out and making them continue and going on and the again, all that was true.
So the movie is obviously about their journey to get to the Olympics and to beat the Soviet Union. And then a lot of people don't remember that didn't win the gold medal. No. They had to come back 2 days later and beat Finland in order to do that. But it also kind of felt like Herb's story, like he was the story within the story. Was that intentional?
Yeah. I mean, it was obvious that that the script needed to center on him. because of what you said earlier, that he had formulated this bizarre plan to beat the greatest hockey team in the world. And, you know, his battle with U.S. hockey and everything that went into doing that was from his point of view. And that's the kind of head coach he was. So, the players had their individual stories, like Jim Craig with his mom dying and all of that. But the core of the story really revolved around Herb. And, what was going on in the United States at the time. We had to kind of explain that the country was very downtrodden and needed something to hold on to in order to kind of lift everyone's spirits.
Gavin O'Connor was the director of the movie, and he did some very interesting things to make it a hockey movie. He didn't just cast actors that could sort of skate. He found hockey players and then taught them how to act. That couldn't have been an easy thing to do.
No. The gentleman, he passed since, but the guy who played O'Callahan, I forgot his last name, Mike something. But anyway, he was a high-level hockey player, and yeah, Gavin literally had to teach him acting, and he was spectacular in the film. I mean, actually, when we were shooting at one point, he was so good, I called up CAA, a friend I had at CAA, and I said, "Hey, man, you better look into getting this guy, because he's really a good actor." Now, he never developed into a top-of-the-line actor, but yeah, there were a few actors that we created through their hockey. But for the most part, when you make a sports film like that, I had learned from 61 that you have to surround your actors with top of the line, almost professional athletes in order to really make it real. Because there's nothing worse than seeing a sports film and kind of getting itchy or wanting to basically, throw up, because the sport is so amateurish. If you're going to do a professional sports story, you have to make it look professional. And obviously they were still amateurs in Miracle, but they, their quality of skating, the Soviet Union might as well have been an NHL team at that point.
The camera types that you guys used really allowed us to feel the speed of the game. It felt very authentic. Talk about the lengths that you guys had to go to make it feel authentic, like it was really a hockey game.
Well, first of all, you bring the cameras inside the rink. And when you do that, think about this. You have to find cinematographers that are quality skaters. Think about cinematographers on the ice, on blades, and holding a camera on their shoulder, steady, in order to shoot the action, okay? And that's where Gavin really nailed it. I mean, Gavin was so gifted at figuring that out. And by the way, he had never done anything like that before as a director. So he and I forgot the name of the cinematographer, but for them to figure that out and bring it on the ice and give you that kind of up close look. It's something that, I had done with documentaries after that with our 24/7 series when I did Road to the Winter Classic. But that was, we still couldn't go on the ice. I mean, we still had to be right next to the ice and zero in on the action low. But, it has to do with audio. It has to do with just hearing the sound of that ice crackling from the skate. It has to do with the call from Al Michaels. It has to do with all these little elements that have to give you that real feeling. And no one did it better than Gavin. Not only shooting it, but in the edit room.
Did you screen the film for all the guys on the actual Olympic hockey team? Did you get those guys together to see it?
Are you kidding me? One of the greatest moments, talk about premieres. So we're in LA, Hollywood. And Disney puts together the premiere screening, invites all 20 players, and all our actors, obviously, and a full house. There must have been, I don't know, 2,000 people in this theater. It was a huge theater. And you're not going to believe this, but so we play the film, and it obviously gets a pretty nice ovation at the end. But what the audience doesn't know is that there was a curtain behind the screen, and just as the as the credits ended, the screen goes up, and all 20 of those players are standing up on the stage in their hockey garb.
Wow.
With the jerseys on.
Yeah.
The actual jerseys. And I'll never forget. I'll never forget that. I think they threw confetti in there, and it was like a magical moment. But yes, they were all at that premiere, and they loved getting together. And they don't, it's hard for 20 people to get together unless you have that kind of a situation.
Yeah, no kidding. What a moment that had to be.
Mm.
Let's switch gears a little bit. Just a couple more things before I let you go. And as you know, Ross, I'm a Pittsburgh kid, but I lived a lot of years up in Boston in the mid and early 80s. And once you start going to sporting events in Boston and the great venues like Fenway Park and the old Boston Garden, kind of gets in you. You did and you mentioned this early on, you also did a docu about Magic and Bird for HBO Sports. Those guys had a great rivalry, led to a great friendship and appreciation for one another. Talk about putting that one together.
Well, that was fun. I got a call from Lon Rosen, who was Magic's agent at the time. It still represents Magic, I think. And he called me and said that Jackie McMullen was doing a book, and it was just coming out on Magic and Bird. And he said, Magic thinks he can get Larry and agree to doing a documentary. Because Larry was the type that would never signal doing a documentary on himself. And they were so close and at that time. And they asked me what I thought. I said, done. I mean, he didn't even get the words out. And they said, we're in, if you can get Larry. And so I went in the office of a guy named Ezra Edelman, who has become quite prolific as a documentarian. And I said, we have the opportunity to do this, and I'd like you to do it. And as producer, director, whatever. And from that point on, we just set out to make that happen. I think it took him, I don't know, 3 or 4 times to get Larry to sit down. That wasn't easy, but we kept hammering away at Lon. But we constructed a really interesting documentary on their relationship, and their early lives, which spoke to their relationship, which, was led into by the NCAA championship game, and then launched in the NBA. It was frosty at first, if I can divulge that. And I know I can because we did it in the docu, but during their college years, it was very competitive. And then finally, due to a Converse shoot commercial, which Larry insisted be done in Indiana, that visit created this bond. And so that's lasted a lifetime now. And it's really emotional film. Really proud of it.
Yeah.
And it's it holds up. The only sad part about all those HBO docs is that the footage is cleared for a certain amount of time in a lot of those docs. And when I was there in the 2005 to 10 range, when I was running the sports department, we would set money aside at the end to try to go back and relicense a lot of footage so those docus don't die on the vine. And I don't know if that's continuing. I'm saddened because those docus hold up, and a lot of people don't get a chance to see them.
There are so many streaming services nowadays, along with traditional networks, plus everyone and their brother like me has a podcast nowadays. So, but do you see gaps in how sports are being covered now, like you did back in the day when you created Real Sports?
Well, that's a gap. I mean, there's no longer a journalistic sports television magazine show, that's for sure, that I know of. Maybe you know of it, but I don't know of it. And that's sad. I think politics and everything has gotten so muddled in craziness that it's difficult to know if you do a magazine show like that, are you going to ruin the merger between Warner Discovery and either Paramount or Netflix? So I think it's, same reason that 60 Minutes seems to be struggling, Real Sports would struggle. If it, it tended, though, in sports, you tend not to aggravate political spectrum, but you do aggravate at times the leagues. And I'll be honest with you, the Roone Arledge used to get yelled at by the Bowie Kuhn and owners of NFL franchises, and he used to get yelled at all the time because his principle was, tell it like it is and get to the truth and don't shy away from controversy or objective journalism, and used Howard Cosell a lot and others to do that. And as I said to you, I told Roone once, I just want to take that philosophy of yours and change the letters to HBO. And that's why Real Sports became Real Sports. And, I used to get calls. I mean, I got a heated call from Bud, not that bad, but the Roger Goodell call was pretty heated.
About what? What are they calling you upset about? That you're telling a story they didn't want told?
Well, the roots of the concussion story, we did a story on the northeastern, place, Nowitzki, and it was really at the beginnings of the question about whether the NFL was liable for the concussion syndrome, and that's when he invented CTE, when they started taking the brains and cutting them open after these players died. And so, I was adamant with our people before we aired it that we interview someone from the NFL to state both sides of what was going on. And the day after it aired, Roger called me because he didn't feel like the NFL side of the story was told to the degree he wanted it told. So, I mean, that created a little bit of a furor, but, we patched it up and continued doing Inside the NFL for a while, and everything was rosier.
Let's talk a little bit about the business side of sports, because with the advent of the NIL, college kids are making a ton of money now. With the transfer portal, it's like they're free agents at the end of every season. We're seeing guys like Ole Miss quarterback Trinidad Chambliss fighting to get another year of eligibility. Major League sports stars are getting $750 million contracts. The Dodgers' payroll this season alone is going to be around $600 million when you include the luxury tax they're paying. We've got quarterbacks in the NFL making $40 to $50 million a year. Is this just the natural progression of things, or is sports a house of cards that's going to crumble under its own weight of these contracts? Because I got to believe the TV deals eventually got to top out, don't they?
No, Chris.
No?
I remember when I got to HBO in 1978 or 1980, I remember that same question coming up, because that was at the early stages of when the rights fees, and most of the money comes from television. Let's be blunt here.
Yeah.
So, just imagine that in those days, a television network was paying $200 million for a season, and there were complaints, oh, how high can it go? And and this is crazy. The world's going to fall apart. But you know what? The streaming networks now have such money flow, cash flow on a monthly basis that because of their number of subscribers, they're able to just pay whatever it takes. And, they see what it does. Sports has become the engine now for television viewership, whether it's through streaming or cable or whatever. So, I got to tell you, I think it only rockets higher. And that's why the reason that all these teams and all these leagues have these crazy valuations is based on the television revenue coming from television. That's where it's all coming from. And it always has,
Yeah.
That doesn't mean there won't be a strike in Major League Baseball because, the players are going to fight a salary cap. But there certainly isn't any cap on the price that networks and streamers are willing to pay for sports.
As we look out into the rest of 26, and I know you've alluded to this a couple of times during the conversation, but can you talk about what's on your calendar for the rest of this year?
Yeah, we haven't really titled it. It's a tentative title so far that I know. It's called 99ers, and off of a documentary that I did at HBO, but it's not based on that. But, the 99ers are the great team of Mia Hamm, Julie Foudy, and Brandy Chastain, Michelle Akers, Carla Overbeck. That whole group were really the pioneers of what is now a revolution in women's team sports and women's sports in general. But they were the first ones that captured the public's imagination in this country and around the world. And as you know, they fought for equal pay. They really started the whole thing. And in 1999 at the World Cup, beating China in the Rose Bowl in front of over 90,000 people, created a storyline that just can't be beaten. And each of those athletes had really incredible personal stories that people weren't aware of and aren't aware of. So we've put together a hell of a script, and Netflix announced it that we're off and running and shooting soon. And hopefully in 2027, the film will be out there in the public.
Is it going to be just on Netflix, or are we going to get to go see it in the theater as well?
That's up to Netflix. That's really, I don't know. I don't know where their thinking will be at that time. I don't know.
Ross, before I let you go, let our listeners know, how can they stay up to date with all the great things that you're out there doing, whether they're following you on your website or on social media?
Yeah, website is active. I think I'm on Facebook and Instagram, but I'm not very active because I guess I have too much to do during the day. But I have an assistant who tries to keep up. But you can always go on my website because we try to keep that up to date. Looks back at what we were doing at Ross Greenburg Productions.
Ross, I can't thank you enough for being such a wonderful guest and friend over the years, and for being one of the great storytellers and docu-creators in broadcast history. It's always a privilege to get to spend some time with you. I hope we can catch up again a little bit later this summer. Maybe talk a little more golf next time.
You got it. Let's do it.
Take care, Ross. All the best to you and your family. We'll catch up soon.
Okay, you too, Chris.
See you, Ross.
Okay.
That is the great Ross Greenburg, folks. Again, when you go out and you check out his website, Ross Greenburg Productions, and you scroll through all of the wonderful documentaries, it's going to knock your socks off, all the great things that he and his production company have done over the years. And then you reach back to HBO Sports, and then you realize why I say he's the greatest storyteller of all time, because he's told the greatest sports stories of our time. And then you go on beyond that as just a wonderful human being. He's meant so much to me in this show, like I say, over the last decade plus. But nobody does it better than Ross. And it really culminates when you go and you check out Miracle. And this time of year, like I say, every February 22nd, we start talking about the anniversary. What year is it since we beat the Soviet Union? And I say we just because I feel like the whole country was rallying around and won that thing. And then you look at going on and winning the gold medal by beating Finland, which, like I say, a lot of people don't remember, but when they had to come back 2 days later to beat Finland. And we're down in that game too, by the way. And there's a great scene in the movie Miracle, what happened in the speech that Herb gave to get them going, because they're down 2-1 going into the third period, and then they come out and steamroll them and win to 4-2. So you get to see that in Miracle. But this time of year, it's always special for me. And look, as I've said to you guys before, because we've talked to Jim Craig in the past, but when you watch the actual footage of what happened, and then you watch Miracle, I get emotional every single time I see it to this day. And it's been 46 years, but I cry every single time because it just meant that much to me as a sports fan. And just the story, to think about what they achieved and the great achievement of some college kids and a wonderful coach, and you put all that together and they went out and win a gold medal. I mean, it's a wonderful story in and of itself, not to mention what it meant to everybody and meant to the country. Ross talked about what it meant to the country at the time. You go back and look at what was going on in our country back in 1979, 1980, with the rate of inflation and interest rates being at an unheard of around 20%. And gas lines and all of that. And you get a taste of that in the film as well, for what these kids went out and did for our country and uplifted our spirits. All of that captured brilliantly in Miracle. And not to mention talking about 61 and what that meant, to a lot of Yankee fans and just to baseball fans for that time frame, and really understanding the story. If you haven't seen it, you need to go see that one as well, because what Roger Maris endured that year, and you get to see. You would think it would be something that everybody celebrated, particularly Yankee fans. Well, when you watch the film, not so much. So I think there's a lot to learn in that. And like I say, Bird and Magic, and he did a wonderful docu on Bill Russell too, and they're just countless. Ross is a treasure, and I can't thank him enough for everything he's meant to me in this show. I look forward to catching up with him, like I say, hopefully a little bit later on this summer. Coming up next is our good friend Donnie Hammond. Before Donnie joins me, I want to give a shout out to our friends over at On Point Golf. Folks, get the #1 ball marker in the game of golf. On Point is the only 3-dimensional ball marker with alignment technology and a removable coin. It is approved for use according to the rules of golf as defined by the USGA and the R&A. As we all know, putting is all about line and pace. Mark your ball with On Point, engage with your 3-dimensional ball marker, and have more confidence in your line, execute the putt, and lower your scores. Folks, with the likes of Jim Furyk, PGA professionals and amateurs alike out there using them now, it's the #1 ball marker in golf that actually helps you lower your scores. Go online to onpointgolf.us, read about the science behind it, then put one in your bag and make more putts. I feel like it's the 15th club in my bag. It's helped my game. Why wouldn't you let On Point help yours as well? Again, onpointgolf.us. Check them out and get one in your bag today. And this year, get ready to experience a game like never before at the Keep, the brand new Bill Bergen and Reese Jones co-designed course at Macklemore. Nestled high atop Lookout Mountain, the Keep offers breathtaking vistas that are made even more spectacular as the autumn colors paint the landscape in rich hues of red, orange, and gold. With its challenging layout and awe-inspiring views, every round here is an unforgettable adventure. Whether you're taking on the signature holes or just soaking in the scenery, the Keep is where your best golf meets nature's finest backdrop. So grab your clubs and join us up at Macklemore. The Keep is open and it's waiting for you. And folks, if you haven't tried 2-Under yet, you really need to. Why? Well, from the first tee to the clubhouse, 2-Under's Joey Pouch is going to keep you comfortable and locked in all round or all day. Build your own bundle by going online to 2Under, that's the number 2, UNDR.com, and save up to 20%. Okay, now back in Next on the Tee with me is a wonderful friend and a fellow space nut, Donnie Hammond. Let me remind you a little bit about Donnie's background. He played his college golf at Jacksonville University, where he was a 4-year letterman. His senior season, he won the Sun Belt Conference Championship by 6 strokes. He would go on to lead Jacksonville University to 2 Sun Belt Conference championships. He is a charter member of the Jacksonville University Sports Hall of Fame. Donnie earned his PGA Tour card by being the medalist at the 1982 PGA Tour qualifying tournament at TPC Sawgrass, and he won that tournament by a whopping 14 strokes. Got his first win out on tour at the 1986 Bob Hope Chrysler Classic. He won again in 1989 at the Texas Open, where he came within one stroke of the all-time scoring record. After shooting a 4-round total of 258 at Oak Hill. In all, he has 7 professional wins, including the 2000 Lakeland Classic out on the Korn Ferry Tour and the 1982 Florida Open. On top of those wins over the course of his career, he has 42 top 10 finishes, including 2 in majors, which we'll talk about here shortly. And I couldn't be more honored I get to spend more time with him this week here on Next on the Tee. Hey, Donnie, how are you, my friend?
Chris, we're doing well. It's great to be back with you again.
I know. I was telling you, I can't believe it's been 10 months. I don't know what the heck's wrong with me, but catch us up. What's been going on with you?
I'm starting to play golf. It's finally warmed up down here in Florida. We've had the coldest winter, I think, in 25 years. It got down to 25 degrees. So the golf has been sparse for the last 30 days or so, but now it's back, and I'm excited to get back on the links. I'm ready to start watching some PGA Tour golf. The season's kicking off, so it's that time of the year where we're starting to get excited about playing the game.
So let's take that a step further, because the last time you were on the show, you were working on your game, maybe looking at doing some Champions Tour qualifying tournaments, that sort of thing. How do you feel about where the state of your game is, and is that something you're going to continue to do in 26?
I think I'll play a few of the qualifiers on the Champions Tour. It's pretty tough right now. You get 45 or 50 really good players, and there's only 3 spots. But, the thrill is trying to get ready for those events. And then, if you pull off a day with a good putter, you can get in and get out there with the guys and, play against them, see how you can stack up. Some of my cool tournaments right now would be like the Florida Senior Open coming up in maybe 4 to 6 weeks. And then I like to go to Colorado in the summer and play the Colorado Senior Open. So those are 2 I would definitely play in, and then hopefully do a few of the qualifiers on the Champions Tour. But it's fun to try to keep your game in shape, and it's a challenge when you get up there middle-aged, but you're always, trying to find a little something. And I think it's good for the brain to be up there and try to stay at your best. So I feel pretty good right now. Feel good physically, and everything seems to be working well. So I think I'll see how I can do this year.
Could we see you pull an Anthony Kim out there on the Champions Tour from out of nowhere?
I don't know about that, but I'll try to get a top 10 somewhere. So those guys are still good on the Champions Tour. They're grinding it out every week. Justin Leonard's playing well. You got Jerry Kelly and these guys. Bernhard's still tough. So, but that was something, Anthony Kim. That was pretty cool to see that he came back as quick as he has. He didn't play well the first couple of years there on the LIV, and now all of a sudden, he's recommitted. He's recovering from some issues he had for several years, and it's just great to see a comeback story like that. He's always had the talent and had a beautiful swing, and now he's put it together, and he's probably got a bright future out there. Maybe within a year or so, he'll maybe try to get back to the PGA Tour, which is really the place to play.
I read that he said his struggles with respect to playing well over the last couple of years were due to some alignment issues that he had. Feet, hips, shoulders, not all in alignment and in alignment with the target. Since fixing that, and as you point out, the work ethic that he's put into it, it looks like he could be a force out there. I saw that he went from 847th in the world rankings, and I'm not sure how he had any world rankings since LIV didn't get any points until this year, but he's jumped up to 203, a few more top 10s, and he might actually get into the top 100 or the top 50, which could get him into some majors, whether it's later this year or into next. I mean, Donnie, it would be something to see Anthony Kim put a peg in the ground at Augusta National or in the U.S. Open.
Yeah, in the next couple of years, he's got a lot of fans out there. He's grown a big fan base, and he's got a lot of people rooting for him, and everybody loves a good comeback story. So it's good to see.
Yeah, and one of the things, and look, the crowd was unbelievable over there at Adelaide. It has been for the last 2 years, this being the third. It's amazing to me the number of golf fans that they are drawing over there in Australia. Did you ever go down there and play?
Yeah, I played a couple years down there. I got invited to come down and play the Australian Open at Royal Melbourne It was about this time of year, actually. It was around February on the regular tour. I was exempt for a few years after winning a couple tournaments, so I thought it would be a great vacation to play, against some more international players. I always loved to travel overseas and over to Europe. So, and then Royal Melbourne became one of my favorite golf courses in the world. Just absolutely loved it. Uh, Actually, Stadler was down there playing that week too, and the Australian Open tennis was going on right across the street, and we would
Wow.
play that day in the wind. It was like windy. It would blow 20, 25 mile an hour every day. We'd get back, get cleaned up, and head over and watch the Australian Open tennis. And then one night I got tickets. We saw Elton John one night, like right kind of where we could walk to that too. And we grabbed a couple little nips out of the mini bar and we're sipping on them at the Elton John concert with Stads and our two caddies, and we had a blast that time. But the courses are so nice down there, that southern part of Australia, and it's a real treat. It would be a great place for Americans to go and take vacations down there. You could play, 6 or 8 great golf courses within 25 miles.
It seems, Donnie, correct me if I'm wrong, but the Australian Open once upon a time, I mean, people are talking about this, and I want to get your thoughts in a minute about how the players, should be the 5th major. That's been a debate for years. But I remember kind of back in the day, the Australian Open was a huge deal on the PGA Tour.
Yeah, I think Nicholas and Arnie used to go down there.
Right.
They used to play. They had some great Australian players, Bruce Devlin, Graham Marsh, and they would tell some of their buddies here on the PGA Tour how great the courses were, and they were able to, coerce them to come down and play, and that's when it really started taking off, and you started getting the players like Greg Norman, Wayne Grady, some really good. Bob Shearer was a great Australian player, and the game really took off down there. But it's a fantastic place to play, and it's a lot of fun too. It's a little bit like the United States, a few years behind. Some of the cool furniture and different things that are around the hotels and things. So it's a cool spot to visit.
Speaking of the players, and Brandel Chambly kicked up a storm, I don't know, over the last couple of weeks, talking about how not only should the players be a major, it would be the best major. Where do you stand on all that? You had a great run and had a lot of great success over at TPC Sawgrass and the Stadium course. What are your thoughts about the players? Should it be the 5th?
Well, that's for you guys to kind of decide. The writers, the great podcasters, and the players know that the Players Championship has the best field in golf. It's the strongest field by far during the year. It's played on a fantastic golf course right now. I think we have 5 majors on the Champions Tour. I think the status of the tournament right now is secure, because when you win a major, that's either the Masters, the Open, PGA. That's one of the majors. But when you win TPC, that's right up there with a major, whether they call it one or not. I mean, that when we used to get, I think we used to get a 10-year exemption for winning that. So it's a big event, and you get just as much respect, I think, for winning the TPC, the players, as you would, maybe winning the PGA, or I don't know. It's not quite like winning the Masters or the U.S. Open or the British Open, but it's right up there, and it belongs. It's definitely in the top 5, and I wouldn't have a problem if it becomes a major one day.
Well, you had so much success at that golf course, and I know it was close to home, particularly when you were over at Jacksonville University, but talk about playing at TPC and learning to play that golf course, because sometimes it plays benign, but sometimes you talk about wind a minute ago. I mean, the wind that we've seen out there at TPC can be incredible at times. How did you learn to be so successful there?
Well, I think, when I won the tour school there, it was a completely different golf course. There was so much brush, those palmetto bushes, just off the rough. If you were 10 or 15 yards beyond the rough, you could very easily lose a ball on 3 or 4 or 5 of the holes out there. So I hit 2-iron off number 2, a par 5, because it kind of goes to the left. And my driver back then, wooden driver, would kind of peel off to the right a little bit. And so I'm just trying to keep it out of the palmettos on 2, on 14, 9. There was a lot of brush. So I'm trying to avoid making double bogeys on that golf course. And I started out really hot. I kind of changed my setup the day before the tournament started, and I really got locked in with the lower part of my body, and it just became automatic for me. And I played conservative, and I don't even think I made a double the whole week. So stayed away from that, made some birdies, got off to a big lead, and then just kind of coasted the last couple rounds. But it was a lot tougher golf course back then than they play now. They've changed it probably 4 or 5 times, and it's a much better golf course now. I think it was very difficult before when we used to play there.
So speaking of using persimmon wood drivers, I mean, one of the things that I think would be an interesting case study, and now that we've got silly season back, if you will, in the fall, we've got the skins game and things like that back. I think it would be an interesting tournament at the end of the year just to see how the guys would play, as if they had to go back and use the old persimmon woods and the blade irons and the balata golf balls and see what scores they could shoot. I think that'd be fun to see.
Yeah, that'd be cool. They would, when we used to hit the persimmon, a lot of the drivers were like 7 to 8 degrees loft. If they're forced to go back and play persimmon now, they're going to try to find these 2 woods, that are more like 12 degrees aloft, because you look down at some of those. I have a few still, the persimmons, and you look down at them. It looks like it's got 4 degrees aloft on there, and I'm thinking, how did we ever hit the fairways with these clubs? But somehow, I mean, we just tried to steer it out there. We didn't bomb it and I think that's why the kids are so long now. When they grow up playing these 360 cc drivers, and you can swing at 110 mile an hour right off the bat, not worried about missing it. That's where they pick up the speed these days. You get guys 160 pounds and they're bombing at 310, all of them. So we had to steer it. We had to kind of hit it. There was a small sweet spot on those woods, and that would be kind of fun to watch a little tournament where they had to play the old clubs. I think they'd still shoot plenty under par.
Speaking of small, remember the old 4-wood and 5-woods? You look at the size of the heads on those things, they're not even the size of a hybrid nowadays. I have my old set of those things still too. And when I pull those things out and look at them, I wonder, how in the world did we ever hit a golf ball with the head of the club this small?
I know. I guess we had talent back then, didn't we?
Indeed. Speaking of success, you also had a lot of it in the Open. You finished tied for 8th in 1990 at the Old Course, tied for 5th in 92 at Muirfield. What was it about golf in Scotland that brought out the best in you?
Well, I loved going over there. I loved seeing some different faces. It was not easy to pack a bunch of sweaters, in the middle of July when you're getting ready to fly over there and you're living in Florida. You almost forget to pack your rain suit. But it was just exciting type of golf where you have to keep the ball closer to the ground. You're going to have a lot of bounces that aren't going to go your way, and you have to really prepare on those courses, because when I would play an Open Championship, it would be probably the first time I've played the course. So I always tried to get over there and get in 3, maybe even 4 practice rounds before the event, and I just seemed to take them so much more serious when I went over to Europe to play. And it was helpful. I mapped out the course. One of the most fun memories to look back at playing over there with the different conditions and different faces and tough conditions. But it was real thrill to play over there.
Donnie, to your earlier point, the thing about links golf is, boy, you could really hit a great drive, and the next thing you know, it hits a little undulation, it does a little something, and the next thing you know, it is rolled into a spot that you really didn't deserve, and now you've got a really difficult next shot. It can give you some bad breaks. That's golf in general. Sometimes you get good ones, sometimes you get bad ones. But from a mental standpoint, When you've really thought you striped one off the tee and you go out to find your golf ball, and the next thing you know, it's in a really difficult spot. How'd you deal with that?
Yeah, that was completely different than playing on U.S. courses where they're a little softer, a little more benign, and it's just something you just have to drill into your head and work with your caddy and just know that that's going to happen. And it doesn't take long when you play there a few rounds to be reminded that that is going to happen. So just have to be a little more patient than when you're playing on a softer golf course.
When you went over there to play, did you bring the caddy that you were working with here with you, or did you seek out a caddy over there that might have had a little more local knowledge?
I think I usually brought my regular caddy. We would go over and kind of make a vacation out of it. Sometimes we'd rent a little house near the course. We'd always maybe stay in the same hotel. But it was, the familiarity of having your regular caddy over there was helpful. Even though, some of the local caddies would know the course a lot better, but I think the big advantage was to have somebody you were comfortable with and could have fun with there for the week. So that's what I went with usually.
You talked about exciting golf a moment ago. Was that the place that you really had the most fun, or were there other courses that really got your juices flowing?
I mean, it was so cool being over there, the different weather. If I had my favorite, I would say being at Augusta National was always my favorite week. I got to play there 4 times and made the cut every year, but that was the place that I would say was my favorite. But being across the pond and listening to the different accents and seeing different fans, they're the best at the British Open. They got some cool little dogs over there too. You see everybody's got a dog and they're walking them and they're just really cute pups everywhere you go around the little towns and things like that. So I'm a big dog lover and I kind of enjoyed that. You see a little dog that in the States that would be like fluffy white dog. When you see them over there in England, they have a little more of a grayer tint to them because of the maybe the rain and the wind and everything
Yeah.
else. They look a little more weathered, but they're so cute, and that was kind of fun too.
Did you see that one of the things that always struck me about the old course is that it's closed down and it's a park and people are out there playing, sitting out there. They got, to your point, their dogs and all that sort of stuff. When you think about, golf's holy land, certainly the old course is where it starts. But then to think how the locals see it as more of a park than anything else is kind of a head scratcher for me.
I was out there one Sunday before the tournament, chipping, walking the golf course. They had the bleachers set up, so I was able to get some lines off the tee. I must have met 50 dogs that Sunday. uh, didn't get bit once. They were so polite over there.
That's awesome. You mentioned Augusta National, and you and I have talked about the 86 Masters a bunch of times, but for you going there and getting to drive up Magnolia Lane and to be in the clubhouse and the crow's nest and the whole nine, that's something obviously none of us are going to get the opportunity to do. Let us live a little vicariously through your eyes. What's it like for all the behind the scenes stuff that we see on TV sometimes, but we never get to experience in person?
Well, the food is fantastic for one thing, and the people at the club are just fantastic hosts. The golf course is immaculate, but the thing that I felt being at the Masters was a sense, a small sense of accomplishment because ever since I started playing when I was 13, you always dreamt of winning, maybe getting on the PGA Tour, hopefully maybe winning on the PGA Tour one day. And then the summation of that would be to be able to play in the Masters. So when you would be on site there, it kind of felt, you felt a little proud of yourself that you made it there. It was going to be a big important competition coming up, but it was kind of a celebration. I felt for myself that I was able to get to that point and be able to make it onto the tour and have such a great job playing golf for a living and being around, some of the greats of the game. But then also winning on tour and then being able to enjoy the complete array that Augusta National and the Masters presents to you, because it is, I think, the finest tournament that we play. That and the British Open. US Open was so tough. I mean, that was just always tough for me. But the Masters was quite a joy to be there for the week.
When you go to the first tee in the Masters on Thursday, whatever your tee time is, the magnitude of being in the Masters has to be ever present. Does it ever slow down? Do you ever get off the first tee, maybe get a couple of holes under your belt and things start to slow down, and now it's just a regular golf tournament? Or are you always ever present that this is the Masters?
No, it doesn't really. I don't think it slowed down much at all during the week, whether it was Thursday or Sunday. The people are so close to you on the first tee, and you get a real spur of adrenaline, so you get some extra energy, but you're also frightened a little bit because every shot is going to count and it's going to be, really meaningful. So you have plenty of energy, but plenty of nervous energy, I guess is what it is. And sometimes that works out well for people, and if you can control it. But by the time you're playing the Masters, you've already played maybe eight or 10 tournaments during the year, and you hopefully can calm yourself down a little bit. But that's the key in any of the big tournaments, is to be able to control your emotions and let that extra little surge of energy help you in the tournament.
You've talked about in the past how you got an opportunity to play a practice round with Mr. Palmer. Who are some of the other legends you had an opportunity to get out there on Augusta National with to kind of pick their brains?
Well, I got to play with Arnie in '86, 9 holes, just the two of us, one late one afternoon, and that was great. He helped me a lot. That was the first year when I was in contention there in '86, when Jack came up from behind, beat everybody. But I mean, that was a special day to just walk with him and get to talk to him a little bit. He showed me lines off the tee and where the flags were going to be on the green. So I was a shot back going into Sunday, and I was going to write Arnie into my acceptance speech that I couldn't have done it without him. But unfortunately, I didn't have to give that speech after Jack shot 65. So. But I finished 11th, and then got to come back the next year. So that was a nice thing.
Donnie, you mentioned the U.S. Open, and sometimes I feel like the USGA takes a U.S. Open golf course and drives it over the edge too much, that they are trying to make par the winning score, it feels like, and sometimes the courses get away from them, and we've seen that over the years. We have so many great golf courses that you guys play these U.S. Opens on. I don't think it needs that. Did you ever play a U.S. Open course where you felt like they put it over the edge and the course just didn't need to be done that way?
Yeah, I mean, there was a couple times. I think Shinnecock got real bad where they had to come in and water the greens in the middle of the tournament. Sometimes the winds pick up, but it is a fine line between being able to give the toughest test for the best players in the world, and kind of be right on the edge of where it's not quite playable. You want it to be tough. You want to bring out the best player in the field, which they've done consistently for 30 or 40 years. You see some of the best ball strikers, and it's just a game of patience out there. You have to realize that this is a course that everybody's going to play, and it could kind of get over the edge a little bit. I've saw certain places where, you'd hit a putt or a chip and it would go 40 feet past, and you would think it was going to stop 5 feet from the hole. So, but they've developed great champions. When Retief Goosen won there at Shinnecock, I mean, you watch him, you watch Ray Floyd when he won. Those guys were the best ball strikers that week. And J.J. Spawn last year was fantastic. The guys that hit the fairway under pressure can hit it and make a great par on certain holes. That was a big test, and you had to be you had to be top level player with top level mind game out there to be able to, finish top 10 in the U.S. Open.
You mentioned Raymond Floyd, and he's a guy that I don't think his name comes up often enough when we talk about the greatest players in the history of the PGA Tour. A guy who had such determination, such drive. I mean, the look in his eyes sometimes had to be intimidating, and he played really well into his 40s, around 50. So when you had an opportunity to be around Raymond, what was it like?
I love playing with Raymond, but I only got to play with him a couple times. I remember playing with him in Dallas one year, and it was blowing as usual in Dallas. And some of the chip shots he hit and some of the pitch shots around the green were just incredible. I remember one pitch in particular. He was 10 yards off the front of the green. Wind is blowing hard right to left. The flag is on the back of the green, right over this knob. He clips this off a tight part of the fairway, and he's watching it the whole way. It rolls like 50 feet out and lips just over the cup, rolls about 2 feet past the hole. And I'm thinking, that's the best chip shot I've ever seen in my life.
Wow. Donnie, was there ever a pairing that you dreaded? You got to the tournament, you saw the pairing sheet, you saw who you were going to be paired with in the first couple of rounds, and you looked down at it and went, wow, I wish there was somebody else's name listed there.
Yeah, there was two guys in particular, two of the best players that have ever played the game, Jack Nicklaus and Tiger Woods.
Is that right?
Yeah, because when you knew you were going to be intimidated when you played with Jack. I mean, that's just the way it was. You were going to have the biggest gallery. And then Tiger, he's had more talent than anybody. You knew you were going to have a huge crowd out there. I think I played with Jack maybe 2 or 3 times, and Tiger a couple times. But you knew you were going to be in for a big, intimidating day with those guys. But, me being a fan of the game, it was kind of fun to watch, the talent that they had and some of the shots they would hit. So I was trying to be, like an equal competitor, but you were still a part-time spectator too, watching the talent these guys possessed.
Did you get a little too involved in being a spectator and watching them and figure, oh, man, I got to hit a shot here?
I think by looking at my scores a couple times playing with them, maybe I did.
Yeah. No doubt. Donnie, just a couple more before I let you go. And I got to get a couple of space questions in each time you're a part of the show. We've got Artemis 2 now scheduled to launch either in early March or April after a technical issue pushed that back a little bit. When it does go, they will be the first crew to get to the moon, even though they're just going to orbit it, but the first ones to visit the moon, if you will, in over 50 years. Are you excited about that one? Or are you more excited to wait for Artemis 3 when we may actually land on the moon?
No, I'm ready for this one. I'm ready. I'm gonna get as close to the Cape as I can down there, and then I think it looks like the launch dates may be March 6th, 7th, 8th, or 9th. We had cold weather kind of put it back a little bit. They had a slight hydrogen leak, and they've been doing the testing, and they're getting ready for it. Yeah, I'm excited to watch it go.
I watched an interview with Neil Tyson deGrasse, and he was asked about the percent chance that there will be a mission to Mars, and his response was, there's going to be a 0% chance that we ever go to Mars. And he explained that by saying, we've never gone anywhere just to do it. There was always a geopolitical reason to go. When we went to the moon back in 1969, it was because we were in a race with the Soviet Union. Now we're going back because the Chinese may or may not have something up there already on the far side of the moon, and we want to check out what they've got going on. And on top of all of that, it probably costs somewhere around $1 trillion to go to Mars. And again, there's nobody there. There's no reason to go. What are your thoughts? Do you think that that's true? Are we not going to be the adventurers to go check out another world unless we have to?
I think, the one guy that's spearheading it, Elon, wants to be multi-planetary, that eventually the Earth is not going to be able to, there may be a catastrophe here, biological, nuclear, who knows, but to be able to venture out at least onto another planet and then maybe be able to go further than that. I think that's something that could happen in the next 30 to 50 years. And, we've never been denied, technology in the past at the rate it's advancing. They're even talking about doing data centers on the moon. You have solar, you have solar power there. You don't need the water really when you have certain conditions up there. So that's probably going to be one of the first things they do before they kind of get to Mars, to see if they can pull that off. But it's kind of exciting still, though, to think about the possibility. But it's already behind schedule. We're already behind schedule on a lot of things about that Mars mission.
Donnie,
So,
before I let you go, my friend, remind everyone what you're doing now.
I'm teaching a little bit, Chris. I'm at this great place. It's called the Draft Academy, right here in Orlando. It's a world-class workout center. They have hyperbaric machines, cold plunge, a beautiful simulator room. So I go down there and work out a little bit. And you can go on the Draft Academy, check it out. The Draft Academy. It's great football players, baseball players, a lot of the UCF football players train there. My son's best friend is part of the gym there. And also Gabe Davis, wide receiver from Orlando here. He's a big part of it. So it's a really cool place, and doing that a little bit to keep me busy, keep my brain in the game. And it's been fun.
How can our listeners stay up to date with you, Donnie, whether they're following you online or they're doing it on social media?
If they want to come in town and get some lessons for a day or two, you could send me an email, Donnie@DonnieHammond.com, or Twitter @DonnieHammond. So I can be reached either one of those spots, and be glad to come out and work with you for a half a day or so. Try to get your game back in shape for the spring or the summer, whatever you'd like.
There you go. Donnie, I can't thank you enough for taking time out of your busy schedule to come back and be a part of the show. I promise it's not going to be another 10 months before you're here. I can't thank you enough for everything that you mean to me and you've meant to this show over the years, and I really appreciate your time tonight.
Chris, I thank you. You're a great host and a good friend, and I just appreciate any time being on your show. Glad to be with you.
You're the best, my friend. Take care. All the best to you and your family. I look forward to catching up with you much sooner.
All right. Thanks, Chris. Good night.
See you, Donnie. That is the great Donnie Hammond, folks. I mean, look, a guy who had a wonderful career in college at Jacksonville University, obviously getting into their Sports Hall of Fame, and then went out on the PGA Tour and had some great success there. And on top of that, just a wonderful human being. That's the thing I appreciate most about Donnie. But getting the opportunity to pick his brain, listen to his stories and the things that he got to be a part of and witness over the course of his tour career, and then the things he's gone on afterwards. And look, now at the Draft Academy, look, if you have an opportunity to go out there and get lessons from a guy who played on the PGA Tour, had that level of success, and now he's willing to help you with your game, why wouldn't you? I mean, where else are you going to get the world-class instruction that a guy like Donnie Hammond can provide to you? Again, it's the Draft Academy down in Orlando. Go online, check that out. Give him a follow at Donnie Hammond. You can find him out there on X. He is just, like I say, one of the great people you get to meet being a part of this game. And like I say, has meant so much to me over the course of the last decade plus that this show has been on. I mean, this is the 14th time Donnie's been on the show. We've been on, obviously, this is season 13, so you can do the math. But a great guy and a great player and a guy that means a lot to me. Go check him out. All right, my friends, it is time for me to put a bow on this episode of Next on the Tee. My sincere thanks again to Ross Greenburg and Donnie Hammond for joining me. How great were those two guys? Coming up next time, one of the giants in the golf industry and the founder of Billy Casper Golf and the Buffalo Agency, plus a guy who has represented so many PGA Tour legends over the years and been a wonderful friend and counsel to me as well, and that is Rich Katz. Very excited to have Rich back as part of the show. He is one of the most delightful, fun, and enthusiastic people you will have in this industry. And along those same lines, another person who has just got so much wonderful and positive energy about her is Callaway's Senior Product Manager for Golf Balls, Jen Whaley. She will also make a return visit to the show. So, folks, it's going to be a fantastic one. It's going to be one full of great stories and very positive vibes, so I hope you'll come back and press play on that one. I want to thank our friends again over at Trib Live for being such wonderful partners and for hosting this show on their site. For the latest news from Western Pennsylvania and beyond, including your favorite sports, go to triblive.com. You can find this show by then clicking on the Sports Section tab, and the show's going to be right there front and center on the homepage of the Sports Section for you. Or you can find Next on the Tee by typing in podcast.triblive.com. And folks, as you know, this show is available also for you on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Good Pods, Amazon Music, and golfnewsnet.com. And as I mentioned at the top of this show, folks, wherever you're listening to this show right now, if you would take just a few seconds and subscribe to it and rate the show, it would mean a great deal to me and help other people find the show, because you know what the algorithms do. They're looking for people that have subscribed and rated the show. The more that comes about, the more people that will be able to see the show and listen in. So take a few seconds if you wouldn't mind and do that for me. It would help me out a great deal. Folks, as you know, I sincerely appreciate each and every one of you for your support. You guys are absolutely the greatest supporters in the history of podcasts, bar none. Until next time, hit 'em straight, my friends.
Thanks for joining Chris again this week on Next on the Tee. We hope you enjoyed the conversations as much as we did. Please share the show with your golf buddies, and be sure to follow it on Trib Live or your favorite podcast app so you never miss an episode. Thanks for pressing play and being part of the journey. We'll see you next week, right here, where the best minds in golf share their stories.